From the newsroom of the Bryant College Station Eagle, this is the Brazos Sports PrepsCast. And now, the Eagle High School sports team, Alex Miller and Jake Weiss.
What's up, y'all? You're listening to the Brazos Sports PrepsCast. I'm Alex Miller from the Eagle, joined always by Jake Weiss, the Eagle's high school sports reporter. Jake, it's week 3. You know what they say about week 3 of the school year? It's exam week, for better or worse. And to me, it kind of feels like it's exam week for a lot of our local schools here. We're going to see what they're really made of in some really key non-district games this week. I don't know about you. What do you think, Jake?
Hey, I like that analogy. Yeah, it is kind of the third week here. I think back, kind of as you say that, I kind of think back when I was in school, and it's like, yeah, the third week usually, first week's that syllabus week. That's the pretty easy week. Second week, you kind of starting to learn the subjects a little bit. Yeah, this third week is kind of exam week. And, like you said, looking at these games, now that you said that, I'm kind of thinking about it, and I'm like going through the checklist in my head. I'm like, yeah, that game, well, that's an exam. Well, that one's an exam. So, yeah, should be a good week.
Well, let's run through some of the biggest games of the week here in the BCS, and then we'll get to 3 games to watch in the Brazos Valley. Let's start with Brian, Jake, okay? The Vikings coming off kind of a blowout loss to Huntsville last Friday at home. When you kind of look back at that game, Jake, where did things kind of go wrong for Brian in there?
Yeah, so there was a stretch there in the second quarter where Brian just kind of couldn't get out of its own way. That was really the biggest issue. I think there was a stretch. Brian scored first in the second quarter, tied it up at 14-all, and I'm thinking, okay, I think we talked about it. We kind of said it was going to be a low-scoring game going in. So at that point, I'm kind of thinking, okay, well, not really low scoring. This might be a little bit of a shootout. And then it's kind of wrong because Huntsville ended up going on a 20-0 run there. And just kind of turnovers really kind of snake bit Brian. They fumbled the ball. They had an interception. Just a really tough quarter for them. Huntsville went on to score 34 points in that quarter, which we both know that's, when a team scores 34, if you're not answering that, that's a pretty big hole. And unfortunately for Brian, they did answer at one point. I think, Huntsville scores 20 in a row. Brian scored, and then on the very next play on the kickoff, Huntsville returned it 97 yards for a touchdown. That kind of breaks their spirit a little bit there in a way, especially right before the half. So just really, that was a tough quarter for them. Outside of that, they kept it close. Second half, both teams are kind of still figuring some things out there in the second half. But I thought Brian played, better in the second half. Just that second quarter is just kind of where train kind of went off the track, so to speak.
Here comes the Burnham team now. This is going to be a tricky game for Brian. The Cubs had a really impressive Week 1 win over Oak Ridge, but they lost to Belton last week. I think that caught a lot of us by surprise. I'm pretty sure across the board we all had Burnham winning that game,
yeah.
Team that they had beaten twice last year. I know Brian's a slight favorite in the Harris ratings, but this won't be an easy one for the Vikings.
Yeah, no, I look back because we were talking about it earlier before we started recording, and I was kind of like, man, what happened in that game last year? Like, I had to think about it. It was a close one. I think it was 55-42. It was
high scoring.
Yeah, it was a high scoring one. At Brenham last year, so kind of interested to see, what it looks like this year because, we both know both teams have new quarterbacks. I kind of forgot to mention this earlier, but it's kind of interesting for Brian. Coach Tellis and I were talking afterwards. We've talked on this podcast about how they've used 2 quarterbacks. Last week, they just went with Boone Turner, but that was just kind of, he said, hey, Casenberg was a little nicked up. We just held him out, want to get him 100%. So, who knows? If we see him this week, it might be interesting to see, if it becomes a shootout like last year's game, if they go back to kind of rolling the dice with both those guys.
Well, College Station, they were off last week, but they're back this Friday. Got a big road game against Temple. Got a chance to kind of regroup after that loss to Lovejoy in Week 1. This was an impressive win for the Cougars a year ago when they beat Temple by 10 and kind of really started to change the trajectory of where the Cougars headed throughout the year. Temple, they're coming off a blowout loss to Willis, and, Temple's a hard place to play for anybody. The big stadium, big crowd. Temple's a really good team traditionally, but College Station's had 2 weeks to prepare for them. They're hoping to get Tony Hamilton back at safety. He missed that Week 1 game. They're hoping Aiden Martinez-Brown's back to full health. This is a cap fight, and it's gonna be a tough one for the Cougars to come out on top, Jake.
Cat fight. I like that. I just got that one. Yeah, I think you're right. Because I'm trying to think back. I mean, College Station had 2 weeks off last year, or did they have a game in between?
Oh gosh. Oh no, they played Nolan
They played
Catholic
Nolan,
week
right?
2.
Okay,
yeah,
that's
and that was
right.
like the weird game where we had all the lightning that one week. Please don't let that
Yeah,
happen
I remember
again.
that. Okay, yeah. Well, hey,
Games didn't start till like 9:30. That was awful.
I know we had rain was it last week? We had a little bit of rain.
Yeah, we did have a little bit of rain
Yeah.
last week.
I don't want to jinx us, of course. Knock on wood, everybody. But I don't think we'll have any more rains. I don't think we have to worry about the lightning. But yeah, now that you say that, I'm getting flashbacks to all that lightning, those lightning delays.
Well, we'll see what the Cougars are able to do. That's the game I'll be at on Friday. Or you're going to be at the Bryan game, is that right?
Yeah, I'll be at Bryan.
Okay.
I know we got our A&M group traveling to Miami, so
Yeah.
Yeah, you and me we'll be holding down the
We're
fort.
holding down the fort. Although it seems like everybody's going away this week. Speaking of going away, Consol, they're on the road against Lufkin. The Tigers were pretty sharp against the team from Mexico last Friday. Will Hargett had a strong night. I think Peyton Bjork is off to a really good start at wide receiver. He's had some really nice plays in both of their games so far this year. This is one that kind of got away from Consol last year. They lost by 2 touchdowns at home to the Panthers. Similar to Temple, Lufkin, traditional power, tough place to play, and Panthers are always a pretty salty bunch.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Way back when, or it seems like way back when now. But when we did our high school media day, I always kind of like to ask the coaches and players, hey, any games you got circled, anything stick out, and usually you do get the answer of just, hey, every game's a big one. But for Coach Schmidt, he talked about how, hey, Lufkin is a power. This is our final pre-district game. They're off next week. So this is it for them. So kind of right before district, this is a good test for Consol. Like you mentioned, they lost last year. I know new staff, of course, now, but the players are fired up. I think I saw some of the players saying, kind of getting themselves fired up on social media for the game, just saying they were excited for this one this week. I just really think this will be an interesting one. Like I'm already kind of interested in to get your thoughts next week on when the game ends. I might have to give you a call when you're driving back, or excuse me, you won't be at Consol.
I'll be at College Station.
Yeah,
Temple.
we'll have I think Luke, one of our seniors helping out.
I don't know who's going to Lufkin, if I'm being honest.
Oh, okay, yeah. Whoops, wow. Yeah,
I think Luke is going to Elgin to cover Rudder, who we'll get to next.
Oh, okay. Well, never mind then. Well, I'll have to call somebody, I guess then. Thought I had that figured out, but yeah, I'm really interested in this one because I covered that one last year. I think Lufkin got off to a pretty hot start, and then Consol had to kind of dig out of a hole, which hey, we haven't seen that yet from Consol. That defense has been pretty solid.
Yeah, I was going to say, the defense has kind of been the calling card so far for Consol. Pretty strong performance against Huntsville, a team that put up 61 last week. So, just from reading a little bit about what Lufkin's been able to do the first 2 games, they've got some playmakers, some guys with some speed. And so defense really going to need to buckle down against the Panthers on Friday night. I
agree. Well,
Rudder, they're really just looking to right the ship, I think, and they're playing Elgin, a team that they've beaten the last couple years. I think the most painful loss of the week in week 2 has to go to Rudder. They were up 34-0, had a pretty extenuated series of turnovers and miscues that really allowed Salado to come all the way back and win by 1. I know the Rangers are 0-2, but they lost to what's proving to be a pretty good Willis team so far, and they kind of had just a really nightmarish second, third quarter against Salado. And so I think Rudder, you could look at them and say, they've lost 2 games, but I think the Rangers could possibly be right there on kind of flipping the script and kind of having a breakthrough win.
Yeah, I agree. I looked back at last year because I was, I know we've talked before on the show and we talked in the preseason kind of about, how Rudder did last year. They only won 2 games. Well, these next 2 games for them, Elgin and then Colleen Chaparral, those were the 2 wins that they had on the schedule. You talk about, they kind of need that breakout win. They won last year against Elgin. I know it was at home, but it's hard to win on the road. We've talked about that. We all know that. But, if they win here, they win this one and then they maybe win the next one back at home. You're 2-2, and you've got to feel pretty good about that going into district, especially for somewhat of a team that's, they're not like all freshmen and sophomores. They're not super young, but it's still a young bunch there. So I think you get those first 2 wins under your belt. Hey, we know how to win now. Let's go into district with a little bit more momentum.
Well, hey, we got a private school showdown in Bryan this week. If you're a 6-man football fan, this is the game for you. Allen Academy at St. Joe's this Friday. Allen bounced back with a big win over Bracken Christian this last week. St. Joe's, they were off after kind of that stunner of a win against Coram Deo. You know, Coram Deo was favored by 45, and then St. Joe's flipped the script and mercy ruled them. I mean, Mark Mishler, man, he's the truth. So, you know, these two teams are pretty familiar with each other. It's a rivalry game. Anything can happen. I expect this one to be a good game Friday night.
I think so, too. I went back and crunched some numbers, did some math. I know I'm kind of famous for sometimes doing some math on the show, but I went back and looked the last 4 years, kind of this senior class. St. Joe's has won, when they were freshmen, just looking at it from the seniors' perspective. St. Joe's won when they were freshmen and sophomores. Allen Academy won last year. Kind of a surprising game last year.
Well, if I was talking with Cease earlier, and if he recalled correctly, Mark Mishler got hurt in that game or wasn't able to play. And so, you know, when you're without your stud quarterback, it kind of hurts.
Yeah, and it was funny. I know last week I talked on the pod about Mark's stat line from week 1. Kind of my fault here, folks. I didn't actually have it on, I didn't have it at the ready. So I wrote that down, too, because I just said he put up video game numbers, but I didn't say what they were. That week 1 win, I know they've been off. They were off last week, but 12 for 17, 278 yards, and 7 touchdowns. I think he added 2 rushing touchdowns, too. So, Mark Mishler, you say he's the truth. That week 1 stat line, that backs that up.
You know, in our pick'em, this is a really hard game for me to pick. I had a really hard time. You'll have to check the Eagle on Thursday to see who I picked. I'm not revealing who I picked. I will say, though, am I in second or I'm in third place? You're not doing too hot. I know that. No offense, pal.
Hey, it's okay.
But Nicole, she's out in first. We gotta catch her. So,
That's all you, buddy. I think I might be in last, folks. I was at least last after week 1. So,
needless to say, if you're looking for a good in-town game, if you've never been to a 6-man game, go check this one out. It's going to be a fun one. These two teams always put up a good game against each other. So we'll see who comes out on top in the big showdown Friday night. So, hey, real quick before we head out, 3 area games to watch, Jake. Let's start with Rockdale at Lexington. How about this matchup on the western front of the Brazos Valley?
Yeah, it's a good one. Rockdale, it's first-year coach. Not an unfamiliar face, Hunter Hamrick. He's back. Rockdale's had some close games so far here. Lexington, kind of similarly, Lexington had a close one last week. Snapped their regular season win streak because they won, every game in the regular season last year, lost in the playoffs. So their win streak's gone. But it was only a 1-point loss to Troy. I
think Troy scored in the final minute of the game, and then Lexington tried a 45-yard field goal on the last play and wasn't able to make it.
Yeah, no, just came up short there.
Who is Lexington's kicker? Because at the 3A level, kicking a 45-yard field goal is very impressive at the high school level in general.
I was gonna say,
but especially at the 3A level. I mean, you don't see that very often. Coach being able to trot that guy out with confidence. So maybe we need to go find out who this Lexington kicker is.
Well, I was gonna say, even at the college level, that 45, that ain't a guarantee every time.
Absolutely. This is a good game though. I think this is one that, if Rockdale can get this win, that'd be good because I know Lexington's down a division from them, but they're without a doubt a district title contender, maybe a regional contender in that region, and Rockdale's they're just trying to find their way, I think.
Yeah.
And they're in a very competitive district themselves, so having a win like that could go a long way, and vice versa. Lexington, they have gotten accustomed to winning, and they're pretty good at it. So I think there's a lot at stake for both of these teams. This is kind of going in the theme of our exams, Jake, because up next we got Anderson Shiro at Snook. The Owls, they're kind of showing early they might be the real deal, man. That defense is It's pretty good. We had him on our player of the week this last week. Was it just the whole defense? That was
the
player of
whole
the
whole
week?
defense was player of the week. I think I've only been doing it for a year, but first time we've ever had just a whole position or a whole group, win the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, Coach Hodges' team is they're doing pretty well. Snook, I'm pretty sure they're 0-2. They had the close loss to Iola in week 1. They got beat pretty handily by Brazos Christian week 2. I think Snook's just looking to get some momentum, right? They're playing up a division. Anderson's 3A Division 2, Snook's 2A Division 1. Or are they 2A Division 2? I know they're 2A.
I think they are.
Regardless, they're playing up, and Anderson's kind of starting hot.
Yeah.
So, if you're the Owls, you just want to keep rolling like you have. If you're Snook, you want to get something going. So, all right, last game, Cameron Yo at Waco Connolly. If I'm being honest, Jake, I'm probably not picking the Yeomen to win.
Okay.
But this is going to be a big litmus test for them for where they're at, because Connolly, they are probably one of the most talented 4A teams in the area. So, I think a strong showing could prove that Cameron Yo, they're the real deal. They can go toe to toe with the likes of Franklin when they see him down in district play.
Well, I think too, Waco Connolly's a ranked team, I believe. I don't want to say, I was looking at the poll earlier, and I think they were ranked last week as well.
Yeah, they've got that 4-star cornerback, Kobe Black.
And so, you talk about them, hey, can they compete with Franklin? This
he
is
might be a
ranked
5-star, actually. Did I say 5-star or did I say 4-star?
You said 4.
No, I think he's definitely a 5-star.
There we go. Okay. But you talk about them, this is a good game for them. You talk about it being a litmus test. Hey, it's a chance to go out there, prove yourself against a ranked team. Even if they don't win, I feel like if they have positive momentum, if they just keep it close, they can go, hey, we took a ranked team, division above us. Now when they get to Franklin later down the line, they can go, hey, remember when we took those guys, to the wire against a ranked team, division above? I think for Cameron Yo and even for Snook, we talked about Snook last, I think for both of them this week, they might not come out with the wins, but if they can just take away some positive momentum, kind of keep things rolling right before district, I think it'd be good for both of them because, man, I know we're talking about Cameron and Waco, but on that Anderson-Shiro defense, man, 50-0 shutout of Danbury last week. I think only gave up 36 total yards of offense. So if you're Snook, hey, you score, like that might be we got to hurry up and take a quick, team photo by the scoreboard to celebrate. I think, did Lee Corso do that one time?
Did he?
I think, I swear I've heard a story about that.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, I think he's done that when he was coach of Indiana. So maybe, get the Blue Jays together real quick if you score first. Quick picture and then get back on the field.
At some point this season, Jake, I want to do a segment on who's got the best mascot in the Brazos Valley. Because I'm sitting there in Navasota last week, and, they got the big old rattlesnake statue outside the stadium, and I'm just thinking, yeah, I think Navasota might have the best mascot, but when you're going up against, a Blue Jay, or, what is a Yawa? What is a Yawa? That is what I want to know. So that's a discussion for another day, but let's put a pin in that and come back to it at some point, okay?
Yeah, sounds good to me. I'm gonna start just having to go through the list in my head now,
All right. Well, hey, I think that's all we got for you this week. Be sure to check theeagle.com for all of our coverage leading up to Friday night's games. Be sure to follow us on Twitter for coverage of games this weekend. Jake Weiss and Alex Miller.